Hello, one last time. This video is a tour of school finance data on the Montana OPI's website. This is being provided to guide legislators and others in the uh, understanding or knowledge of where to locate various information associated with schools and school funding. To start, if you go to a web page that is opi.mt.gov, you will land on the OPI's webpage. To navigate to financial data, you would hover over the word leadership, and then directly underneath in school finance and grants to a box titled School Finance. If you click School Finance, a new page should load for you. And over here in the orange or yellowish block, there is a box titled OPI Financial Data Files. Giving that a click, it should establish a new page. And in here, the most beneficial data files, I believe, for legislators, districts, and the like are anything titled budget. These are the budgets by district for all 400 operating and non-operating districts in fiscal year 2021. It shows their adopted budgets, the fund balance reappropriated, the non-levy revenues, the property taxes, and the state support. It's a large Excel file. But the nice thing about the Excel file is it's filterable and it's manipulatable for your own purposes. Additionally, there's other files. There are per pupil expenditure files. Oops. If you notice, the most recent year under here is 2020. The reason 2020 is the most recently available file is because districts report their trustees' financial statement information to the OPI in one shot, and that occurs in the summertime, generally between August and September. Districts then have until December 10th to make adjustments to the files. So after December 10th, the final information is compiled and produced for publication. So 2020 is the most recent year of information we have for anything that is trustees' financial summary information. So these are per pupil expenditures and actually per pupil revenues. Keep in mind that the definition is the state definition of per pupil expenditure. There are other definitions that exist out there in the world that are per pupil expenditure as well. There's a federal one that gets discussed occasionally. Frequently, when we talk about it in the state, it's generally the state per pupil expenditure that is being discussed. This area is school expenditures. This is a core file of the expenditures that were made by districts. It's a flat file. It's very whole. Just keep in mind, if you decide to utilize this information, there's some things that might need to be removed or adjusted, such as interfund transfers, expenditures associated with certain funds, certain funds. I'll just leave it at that. So those are the expenditures by district. These are the revenues by district. These are the fund balances of districts. So these are all Excel files. I don't really want to show you each Excel file. But I just want to let you know that they're there and available to you. But there is another location where you can go view data. And it's the same exact data. So just let you know, the Excels are out there if you need them. This time, however, if you hover over the word leadership, And if you go under data and reporting and go to an area titled GEMS Data Warehouse and give that a click, it should load uh, a landing page for the data warehouse. This is a giant warehouse that holds various data from certain databases within the OPI. It's final data. It's a warehouse. Underneath this, for school funding information, if you hover over the word data and then school finance and give school finance a click, it should load another page. Over here to the left is a menu button. And if you click the menu button, it should pop out a drop down. And I was mentioning earlier that there are budget reports in Excel format. Well, there's also school budget reports, and there's comparison ability, there's recap information, there is fund balance information. So if you, the simplest example just to show, if I click the school budget dashboard, it takes a second to load. This is information that shows school districts' budget limits. So these again, as if you listen to one of my earlier presentations, it shows the maximum and the base budgets for districts, also the adopted budgets that districts had in any given year. Now right here, this is the state view. And I know that because up here in this dropdown, it says state. But if you're interested in a particular district, you can do the dropdown and then click the view report button. And it'll help you to drill down to looking at one or two districts. You can also adjust the span of years using this drop-down area as well. So this ends in 2021 here. The other thing that some people find interesting is you can look at specific funds. If you listen to my earlier presentation on funds, you might notice that these are the 11 budgeted funds. There's also information about average number belonging, and this information is available by school. This is statewide. There is information for funding sources. You may recall in an earlier presentation, we talked about fund balance reappropriated, non-levies, property taxes, county taxes and support, and state support. There's information about fund reserves. This hasn't been discussed at an earlier time. If you're interested in this information, please feel free to contact me. And then there's a breakout of the general fund of the funding components that were discussed in an earlier presentation. There's also a breakout of property taxes by budgeted fund. So this is all budgeted data. So we had this loaded back in October. It was finalized and available at that time. Not quite done though. I want to show you a few other areas that relate to what those Excel files were that I started with. There are trustees' financial summary reports. These would be the revenues and the expenditure and the balance sheet core files that I mentioned. And there is also per pupil information. Let's take a look at the per pupil information. In the per pupil information reports, remembering that this is the state definition that was being discussed, there is a copy of the definition available. And let's look at per pupil revenues first. And this is also a dashboard. So in here, the most recent year is 2020. And if you'd like to look at this compared to a particular county and then also a particular school, you can use this drop down to make that available for you. There is a breakout of the revenues that were reported on the trustee's financial summary. And it is inclusive then of ARA, which is the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, I will say we're working on getting these words updated. It will also say CARES Act funding very soon. It shows the revenues reported for federal. These are additional federal funds, county funds, non-levies, property taxes, and state. Now this is a bar chart and it's a little bit hard to view, but if you click next to the bar and you hover over report type and choose grid, it should update and it'll give you this information by percent. Now, if you want it by dollars, you may have to use the Excel file. These are revenues, per pupil revenues for elementary, high school, and K-12 districts are also available. The data is available in more broken out formats underneath the menu button. And the last thing I want to share with you in this presentation is, if I can get my mouse to work, the per pupil expenditures, which tends to be the more discussed term. Again, state defined. And again, the same, you can look at, you can change the range of years. You can drill down to your favorite district. Oops, I really didn't want to do that. Oh, that's okay. We'll look at the Beaverhead for a minute. Here are the per pupil expenditures by function code. And this is part of that governmental, generally accepted accounting principles structure that I was discussing earlier in an earlier presentation, by which we establish how the expenditure is made for its purpose. There's functions, there are objects. A function tends to be a larger grouping. This object then will be a subset that lands within these functions. I think I'm getting too deep into this. There are also grids for per pupil expenditures for elementary schools, high schools, and K-12s. So you can drill down and take a look at your own school area if you so choose. But I just wanted to let you know that this tool is available for you. And sometimes when you hear the words per pupil expenditure, this is the area they're referring to. And so I wanted to let you know that they're available on the OPI's website in both Excel format and also on the GEMS website. Believe it or not, these files are downloadable and they do download to Excel if you monkey around with it a little bit, but the Excels are a little cleaner to work from. Well, I hope you enjoyed this overview, and this is the third and final installment of my Zoom videos that I'm making available. I hope you will join me in one of the live discussions that I believe are being created for time for us to have these discussions. Appreciate your time, and I really hope you found this beneficial and helpful. Thanks a lot.